I have no idea. Pretty hard. I can use that. Oh, nice. And then. I can tell it's crazy.
Alright, everyone.
We didn't put on some.
Ready?
I gotta go there.
Let's do this. Thank you.
Somebody's got to take that.
Practicing.
No, I'm not. Oh.
Alright. This is a meeting of the Shellfish Advisory Panel. Katie Egan, Chair, Anna, DM, Fisheries. It's not. Oh. this- For everyone attending virtually, all participants must be muted throughout the meeting. To make a comment or ask a question, you must use the raise hand feature in the Zoom webinar. The meeting facilitator will unmute one participant at a time to make their comment or ask their question. The participant will then be remuted. Please minimize background noise while unmuted. Thank you. Everyone's with the agenda. As you can see, Providence River is the only action item. We have a quorum. So, and then after that, he will go into any other matters for public comment. Senator? Okay, Anna? Thanks.
All right, so you probably all recognize this table. We've shown it multiple times in the past. I wanted to just give you a snapshot of where things are at with Area E, Providence River. So for the 2025 summer, we have been open for 15 days out of the 23 days. There's one potential day left, December 12th. But as of now, their total harvest was 4.79 clams out of the area, which is pretty much on par with what we've seen in the past. This information was updated on the 4th. So as of now, this is sort of where we're at with the harvest in Area E for 2025. In terms of hours of harvest out of this area, the summer schedule realized 45 hours of harvest. So because it was 15 days at 3-hour openings, it was 45 hours. I'm showing this because the proposals are that we're going to be looking at today, we've also broken down to look at as in terms of total hours of harvest up in that area, which I think is a little more relatable for some folks. So it realized 45 hours up there. There were 24 hours not realized on that schedule as of this point in time. Obviously, there's one potential day left for 3-hour opening up there. So at this point in time, 24 hours that were not used within Providence River from that summer schedule starting in May. Any questions?
Not including the day that's not, it's in limbo, right? That's 24 hours not realized, not including the
Exactly.
day.
That's exactly
So it's
right.
another
So there's
3
still
hours.
potentially 3 more hours. Yeah.
So did you count by the hours? I can't see very well.
Oh, yeah.
For the winter openings, the 6 2 hours.
So that's separate from here.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just talking about May through up until this point, this day today. So, so 45 hours were realized and actually open. 24 hours that were on the schedule that were not used. So, any other questions? So with that, we're gonna make our way into the proposals that were submitted. There were 2 proposals. Katie's gonna present that information. After those 2 proposals, we have a slide comparing the proposals. So you can kind of get a picture of like how many hours they're proposing, how many days, and to try and compare as best possible. to the current default schedule, which is the 6 days at 2 hour openings for the area. So, right?
All right, the first proposal we have is, oh, sorry, the default. So this is, you guys have all seen this, and this was what was, last spring, or, late winter, spring schedule. You're all familiar with that. Does anyone have any questions? Right, now we have industry proposal number 1. Which you guys probably have all seen in your e-packet. But if anyone has any questions or proposal would like to speak to it. Feel free, Mike?
Yeah, this is the round Shellfishman's negotiations proposal. First of all, I want to thank everyone here in Fish and Wildlife. This is the 3rd meeting we've had just over a month. So I appreciate taking the time and effort and allowing us to move forward on this. As we know, we've been trying to figure out this Area E and get as much of the time allotted to us as we can without upsetting the market or screwing things up too much. And even just the winter opening, the winter spring opening took us a couple of years to finally get into it. But as we got into it last year, which is when we did the default schedule last spring, we noticed that it was pretty popular and it was successful. Of the 6 potential openings, we got all 6. Being the fact that a lot less people showed up, I think it was 95, and I think that was on the best day. And our production over 2 hours was half of what a normal 3-hour opening would be in the summer. We looked to try to expand the days that we get up there during this period, and hopefully not cause issues going forward. And also, it's partly because we're not getting the number of days that are allotted to us. As we mentioned, 15 of the 23 for the summer, and it's just, we're just trying to spread it out. There's been a lot of people that talked about year-round openings, and we're kind of moving towards that direction with this proposal. So what we decided to do is, instead of every other week, which was a Monday through Friday, first available, we decided to try once a week starting on February 9th. We also understood, or were concerned, that a Friday opening, if that became the first available day, so probably 15% chance, that we could have a Monday opening, which would really, especially that time of year, cause extra problems. So for that reason, we went Monday through Thursday, first available. Now, for the starting in February 9th to the end of the 26th period, we also talked about how this is February and sunrise around 6:50 in the morning, and it's a long ride for a lot of people. Wickford guys is probably 40 minutes, probably half hour for me. And that time of year can be a little treacherous with ice and whatnot. So we decided to change the openings, keeping them at 2 hours from, instead of 8 to 10, 9 to 11. So that would cover the month of February. So then you go into March, and once again, we wanted to try to have it open 1 day a week. First available Monday through Thursday. But we switched back to the 8 a.m., 10 a.m. period. Sunrise by March is 6:15, 6:30, and the weather's starting to get a little better. So basically, we're just trying to maximize the number of days that we can get there and grab these days that we didn't get last year. And between rain and closures, we think nature will take care of a lot of this. I will note, and we talked about at the last meeting, that with climate change or whatever you want to call it, we're getting a lot more rain during the winter than we used to. We used to get snow, and snow doesn't close these areas. I was talking to these guys about how 2015, that super cold winter we had, the last really bad winter, Greenwich was open all the whole time because it was, never rained. But the guys were all frozen in. They couldn't get out. Greenwich was literally frozen. So there's always challenges this time of year. We just thought of expansion of this program and see how it works. If it doesn't work, then next year, when we do the year schedule that we'll be talking about later, maybe we'll cut back or maybe we'll cut back today. But we just thought it was an opportunity to try to get more days in and utilize the number of days that they give us.
I just had one question, with your proposed total number of hours and the estimated total hours, that's assuming all the days were put in, so that doesn't include like a rainfall, like estimator, it's just like if they were all, that's the.
If it's all realized, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so up on the slide, you can see, we've calculated out the schedule if all days are used would total 24 hours. And then the estimated harvest out of that area, based on past harvest rates, would be about 1.7 million pounds.
Anybody, any more questions before we go to the next proposal?
Just a comment from the enforcement perspective in terms of the differing times, 9 to 11, 8 to 10, it can make it challenging because people don't realize those time changes occur, you know, unless there's really strong messaging out to the shellfishing community that everybody's on the same page. You know, we want to try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but when you go and start changing times 1 month to another, it can make that challenging.
Yeah, and we'll do reach out. We have a website and hopefully DEM will do their website to make sure that gets out. I mean, we did have a change over a 2 or 3 day period this summer when we changed it to a 6 a.m. opening. And, you know, I was worried about that, what you just said. But it seems like there's quite a network of people telling people it gets the word out. So if you're a full-time fisherman, you will hear it. Maybe we just ask the DM if they can be there early to make sure if people are starting early, they're asked to wait till 9.
Or can't you just put it on the closure hotline?
Maybe that's perhaps.
That's a health department line, that's
Yeah.
not an enforcement line.
It's water resource.
Yeah, we haven't traditionally mixed, fisheries regs and water regs, but. There's lots of ways, I mean, you're on the list of a lot of you. All the dealers can put it on. Yeah.
Everybody should be on this.
Right.
If they miss it, go well.
Now, if I may, like John, these big guys have been talking about, you know, wanting to get more access year round. I know Dave Andre, I talked to him quite a bit, texting mostly, and you know, I told him he should be here, but they're having health problems with his shop and stuff, but he's been pushing for the 1 day a week since the very beginning, you know. He said, Mike, you know, the dealer can't get rid of, you know, he's a different dealer than other people, but he's been pushing that since then, and he just said, well, it's not open, or even in November, he was complaining that, you know, just the guys aren't working, so I know that his dealership really supported that, you know, more of a year-round aspect out of it.
Yeah, I'm all for it. This is, I think, the way it really should be, and it'll keep people involved throughout the year, you know, especially if there's any young guys that, you know, are thinking of doing this job full time. This will be a good way for them to stick around, you know, as opposed to just, you know, oh, to feast the family, you know, here and there, you know.
John, we are the young guys.
I know that.
No, he's the young guy.
Right? Wow.
Listen, you've all seen it. In Abernaut Cove alone, 3 guys in their 30s approaching 40 are out. They got full-time jobs now. Only one young guy besides Jeff, that's Alan Dunkley. I don't know of anyone who's 40 or less out on the water right now, other than Alan Dunkley. All of us are in our 60s. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so-
Oh, 59.
What? Oh, okay, close enough. We're phasing out. You know, our industry is in an extremely steep decline right now. Sorry, I'm gonna,
No, that's why this is so.
this is critical.
Yeah.
In 2012, we harvested over 900,000 pounds of quarters. 9,003,000 pounds to be exact. Last year, we harvested 302,000 pounds. That's a 66% drop over a 13-year period. That's 5.5% annualized every year, year over year. In 10 years from right now, in 2035, we're gonna be harvesting at the present rate only 161,000 pounds of quahogs. The industry is over in 10 years. If we don't do something radically different than what we're doing right now, we gotta get up in the river more. That's where the resource is. There's not much left anywhere else in area A. Area B, man, it's tough. And in the lower bay, no one's worked there full-time in over 20 years. And there's nothing there. There's limited spots where you can catch stuff, but you cannot make a living in the lower bay like we did in the 80s. It's gone. And it's not reseeding. So we gotta do something radically different. I'll stop.
Right?
Before you get to the next one, which I believe is mine, I think there might have been a typo on either my part, probably my part,
Okay,
with the change in times. I wasn't looking for the 3 hour.
okay, well, we'll get to it and then
Okay.
we can.
It was the time difference I was trying to accommodate their time difference.
Right, and anybody else? Nobody else has any other comments on this proposal, we'll move on to the next one. Okay. Rules industry proposal 2, and we've got to speak to it, and then later corrections.
Yeah, so the only correction, I was trying to follow their time difference, and I might have mixed it up, so it's their same times. It's not the 3 hour difference, sorry, if I made you go through all that way.
Change the estimated total harvest a little bit.
Yeah,
So
Divide by a third.
that should be 8 to 10.
8 to 10.
Yeah, top is 9/11, yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same exact thing as theirs, same exact thing, it's the only one is that I'm just worried about the February. It's not a huge deal, I get you guys wanna get in there. I just can't promise, a good price, it's just at that time of year. That's.
you wanted to. So it's the same, it's just.
It's the same, it's just, the week of February 16th.
Yeah, 2 openings in February instead of 4.
Yeah, well, 3, you have 3 right
Oh.
I think 2 hours in there, that's 20 cents, and then have.
now. I mean,
Struggle the rest of the week in the area A, so.
yeah, I'm not gonna have it, you guys, it's just that was just mine.
So yours is
So that's gonna
one
drop
last day.
One last week, the week of it's February 16th to the 20th is all mine. So it's one less day, yes.
So that would be 22 hours then.
Sorry.
That's okay. We're gonna just scratch that.
Well, basically, we're voting on, whether we want to crapshoot that extra day and see if the price will rebound by the end of February.
Right, does it
Well-
rain on February 9th and the next week we would have it, or the opposite?
Yeah, so if we, say no to one, and then it rains, we're screwed, so.
Yeah.
Well, the problem I see is say it doesn't open for Valentine's Day, which is a decent week, which I'm 100% I want it open. Say it rains that week. Now, February is slow, so you only get that bump in Valentine's Day. Now it opens the next week. There's nothing going on that week.
That's
Right after a holiday.
It's February, we'll take it.
I mean, that's just so, I can't, I'm just telling you now, I can't promise them.
And do we have a breakdown on the number of participants in the February as opposed, I remember we discussed it was like 95 was a big number. I mentioned how the last time it opened in April, it was like a 70-degree day and everybody was out. Was there like 40, 50, 60 guys maybe?
I think it was 7 or something.
Was it 7?
So 77.
I remember that first opening, maybe because the word hadn't got out, but I couldn't believe, so.
Yeah, it was, the range was 77 to 118. So pretty much as the season progressed, more and more
Oh,
people.
so 95 was the average. Yeah, thank you. So to Jerry's point, to everybody's point, it's a crapshoot. When we talked last year about adding December 12th and getting rid of the last week in September, well, it turned out that would have been open if we kept that last week in September. But what the price would have been, right? So as Jerry says, it's a crapshoot. It seems almost like you have to have more chances, you know.
Well,
To,
ticket to the lottery, that he
Yeah.
pointed out.
more swings at the plate kind of thing, but, you know. Hopefully, if there's a problem, then it corrects itself the next week with a stronger market that. Or, you know, I could live with taking 1 week off. It's not like it's a major change to the plan, but I think we should take as many swings as we can.
Well, that's exactly where I am. I mean, I don't wanna take a hit in the price either, but I don't wanna say no. You know. Say, don't take that week in case it doesn't rain, or it does rain, we get that week and nothing else.
Or everything's frozen
Yeah,
or,
so just, you know,
50-50 chance with
Yeah.
rain closure anyways.
Right, so-
If we get half of what's up there, would be a win, right?
Exactly.
Or any month.
Yeah, it's just that week in general, because February is a slow month. 100%. You get to Valentine's Day, and then that week after Valentine's Day is the slowest week in February, without a doubt, just because you just got off the holiday, everyone just had their fill of plans and all that. Now you go to the week after, now it's, you're even worse than what the normal February week would be.
yeah, it's a short month and everybody's hitting the size they are for the year too.
Yeah.
So there's, a lot of guys wanna get in there.
I get it,
If
I'm
we
not
can.
gonna,
well,
I'm not gonna fight with you guys, one day, I just can't promise.
You're voicing concern, which is really great. That's
Yeah.
why it's great that you're here and stuff. And maybe this was next year when we do this, it's like, okay, maybe a little less if we have a bad event. But I think I learned, you know, a couple of years ago, when we were so concerned that we pulled back our entire winter proposal that, you know,
We got lucky last year, we got all 6 days in,
That's crazy.
but, we're scheduling 12 days here, we're not gonna get 12 days. We won't.
70%, I don't know if it's better than winter, but 70%, so, you know, we're probably talking
Well,
8 days.
yeah, but
And we're taking a
You'd
Friday
be at-
off. We're
you'd
taking
be
a
at
Friday off.
70% if you were talking Monday through Friday, we're only talking Monday through
That's
Thursday.
like, we took
So the
Friday
percentage
off,
drops down now,
right,
because there's less days in the.
right, so it's probably 60%.
So,
Is there an opportunity to push it that first week in May? That's not an option. What I'm saying is, I don't mind the amount of days that you guys want.
Well,
It's just that week in general.
I mentioned earlier, we talked about this off record, I think May 1st is the beginning of the winter, of the summer schedule. That's how we've been doing it. So the idea, and I don't wanna change thoughts here, but, you know, schedule this in, and then in February, late February, when we have the meeting, we'll have most of the numbers in for DEM. And then we can talk about doing the January 1st opening, you know, counting, and just where we're at on that, so.
Cause that week before would be leading up to Mother's Day. That's,
What are you talking about, the April?
no, the May 4th week, so the week after your last week. That
Well-
week after.
Last year, I thought we proposed, that, you know, we basically opened it up starting May 1st, I think you said we took a week off.
Yeah, we did a week on.
You know, that's kind of negotiated it here, but generally, especially given the fact that we're not reaching the number of days. I think we should try to get, you know, from May right till the end of October, you
The
know.
24 hours that are remaining is what your proposal is. So that would be utilizing everything that we were offered in the beginning, if we get it. So I think it's fair.
That's a good way to look at
Yeah,
it.
I think that's very fair.
good point, John.
More the merrier.
So we want to discuss more, are we talking motions, are we?
I'm just gonna ask that, we make a motion that.
Is that an option? Could you do that first week of May? No.
So
Well, no,
we're
we
gonna ignore this slide.
No, we haven't set it.
won't set it till February.
The theory is that in February, we're gonna be looking at starting May 1st, the schedule for the year. So you could schedule May
Yes.
later,
Yeah.
doesn't need to be now.
No, I'm saying like if you put that 2 hour opening at the first week of May, because this past year, we didn't do that. We didn't start until, like
Well-
a week before, Memorial.
Right, and actually, I think we tried it, I thought we got in, because I thought we missed the days we would have got them. We're gonna be doing the May 1st to October scheduling in February, that's what the agenda is saying. Continued discussions we might wanna kind of change everything around, so we start with the January 1st counting day, but Right now, the May scheduling, starting in May, is not on the docket here, or it will be discussed in February. So we'll have plenty of time to do what you're saying. You know, so we're not saying, no, we can't do that.
No, I'm not, that's not what that's what I'm trying not to say. I'm not saying to schedule that, May, I'm saying just to push that week that you have the 16th to that first week in May. That makes sense.
But the thing is, we're getting.
You're getting the same amount of, you're getting the same amount of days, same amount of hours, instead of using that February week, push it to the week before
You get
Mother's Day.
locked up on, knowing that, you're thinking we're gonna get older days. You know what I mean? That
No, it's
extra
just that week.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, we're getting locked up on that one extra day for May. You know what I mean? Pushing, taking that off there and putting it there. We're not gonna get all those days, so we're gonna still have a week, you know, we can still do it in May. Well, May is gonna start up. That's what I'm saying. The whole new 23 days, 20 days, you know, whatever that number is gonna be starting up in May. So whatever we decide for May, we'll get in. Future discussions, we'll see how we're gonna count them all together, but that's not for right now.
I get it. I'm saying historically, we haven't done that week up at Providence River in the past. I'm saying a 2-hour opening because of the amount of volume that other deals were saying that, you know, they can't handle, which is okay, but this would be a 2-hour opening of the first week. That makes sense, but no.
Well, it makes sense, but not at this point, because this is for,
We may look for the next meeting.
we'll have a membership meeting on it. The, Fish and Wildlife already talked about scheduling, you know, February meeting with a subsequent Marine Fishery Council. You know, hearing, so that's in the works, but it's not for this. So can I make a motion on my own? I make a motion that the RISA schedule, do I have to read it? Yes.
You can say
Proposal number one.
Yeah, proposal number one, thank you, Bruce.
I could second that.
to recommend proposal number 1. Right, Mike, is that the motion on the screen, is that your,
Yes,
okay,
industry proposal number one.
okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll move to a vote, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. So moving on to our next agenda item, any other matters? Oh, sorry, Brendan, go ahead.
Yeah, but, just. I wanted to talk about the shore, not, what do you call it? Shore digging. How they made it at any time. From a dealer's perspective, I really don't like it. Just, I've had. To me, I don't like a guy showing up at 6 o'clock at night. I mean, not anything against them, but to me, I don't, whether they, you know, probably they were fishing 20 minutes ago on the shore, but it's 6 o'clock. I don't, you know, you could have been digging at 9 a.m. and now it's been sitting there. You know, I just don't like that. I don't have total control of where, how long that product's been sitting out. You know, I'm I'm risking trusting what they're telling me that they just went shorty. Kind of thing. I don't know if there's an option, I don't know, like, 4 PM is the latest or something like that, that they can get out there. I don't like, limiting them to get out there, but from a dealer's perspective, that's a risk. If they were digging in the morning and then they've had it for 8 hours, now I have to take the risk if they properly took care of it for that long, you know what I mean?
How often does that happen?
It's happened quite a bit this past, and I turned some people down. And I don't like, I feel bad, as a lot of guys, I feel bad because it just worked, but I have to take the risk on them, if they did fish that in the morning, where the hell it's been for.
Well, they could have fished that all day, and that's kind of what the rule allowed them, right? If it's low tide at 3 in the afternoon, they'd be doing the low tide, so they'd be getting at your place at 6.
I get it, I'm just saying there's a chance that that's not the case, and he fished in the morning, or he fished the tide was at 12, and he didn't show up till 6. Now, the 6 hours, it's probably been sitting out, kind of thing.
Well, this is being brought up, if you don't mind, Anna mentioned at the last meeting, we all kind of scratched our head that a lot of dealers were putting in that people were tide digging. Now, I asked my twin Shellfish, and they were like, no, we haven't seen any, bump or anything like that. Have you seen a large, more tide digger selling out now that the regs have changed?
I wouldn't say I saw a bump. I would say I saw a lot more. I guess a bump, yeah, I saw a lot more people coming in at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, because we're still there, and some guys know that. So I just don't like.
Okay, they're tide digging, and that's what they're.
Well, that's what they say, and I have to risk everything if that product's been sitting out, especially on a day where it's, been 80 degrees out. And I just don't like, I have to take the risk of, if it wasn't that they were short digging an hour ago, then I have to take the risk that they probably took care of it if they fished it 6 hours ago. I ended up turning some guys down. I hate to do that, but I'm taking a risk on that product becomes my responsibility now. And I find that's a recall isn't just telling someone that, that's shutting down the bay, that's thousands and thousands of dollars in notices and just a bunch of shit and mess that I just don't want to be involved in.
I don't blame you.
I actually did get a digger got bolt, well, he was, when he came into the marina, it was late in the afternoon. And an officer jumped on his boat and started questioning him about how long he's been underwater, you know what I mean, like the product.
When it started to
dry. And that you only get about 4 hours in the summer, right? How many hours in the summer?
12 hours at the summer.
12 hours in the summer, then if.
No, it's shut up, you were 4 hours.
You know, it's 4.
No, it's-
No, it's 4 hours from the time you finished into the deal.
No, it's from when you start.
When you start,
When you start digging, I believe it's 8.
8 hours.
He said that one of the guys who shore digging that he knows, that he came in, he went shore digging that afternoon. And he didn't sell out till the next day. And he was pissed off because he was getting a lot of crap about how he handled the stuff in his boat. And then he said the other guys get all night to sell the stuff.
That's a problem.
I don't like it, to be honest. Just from a dealer's perspective, I get they want to work 100%, I get it. It's a lot of risk for me. When it comes to that many hours of difference and what the hell where it's been, it's just tough.
Could there be something put into place where it was so many hours after mean low tide? That they had to get them to your shop?
I
If it was in the afternoon, it wouldn't really help. To your point, it wouldn't help it, but they're still within their legal, 8-hour type thing. Get it to the dealer.
I mean, it's completely, we can come up with something that, it's just, to me, like, I put up a policy for us, I think it was 5 PM the latest to come in, which I don't want the stuff that after that time, and I had a lot of guys still show up 2 hours after that, and I had to turn down a couple guys. I feel bad, but it's just a risk that we don't want to take.
So Brandon, hypothetically, let's say it's the summertime, it stays light till almost 9 o'clock, end of June, early July. You get somebody working a tide at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, your shop is closed, they bring the stuff home, you don't see them till 10 AM the next morning.
Yep. That's another thing I don't.
That's a problem.
So I'm taking a risk, so if I turn them down, what's to say they don't come the next day with the same stuff? And it's just sitting in a garage kind of thing?
There's some guidance in the Department of Health regs, and it wouldn't be policy necessarily, but for your own protection and public health. Cheap waterproof thermometer. You Struck one or two and take an internal temperature. And if it's way above ambient, you say, I can't take it, but it gives you some quantification. But it is a problem, the scenario you just outline, and just, I mean, personal observation, people who I know are commercial shore diggers, I've seen work on ice, you know, it's full sun, you're in an aluminum boat, it's hot. It is a problem.
Not supposed to be a boat.
It's just a risk that I don't like taking. I mean, if nothing changes, that's fine. I'm just gonna make, my own policy, but I'm just stating how we felt, what happened this year.
I know one issue that's come up time and time again with some of the guys that work off their boats is, okay, we're only allotted X number of hours in there. Shore digging, it's a little bit less regulated because they're working the tide going out, they're working it coming in. So in essence, they would be getting 5-6 hours in there, or say 5, whereas we've only got 3. So that's come up many times, I've heard, as far as a lot of the guys that are working off the boats don't think it's fair.
Did we come up with what the bushel limit was for tide diggers?
I think it was 6, right? I think it stayed at 6.
It's 6 for the tide digger boats, it's all commercial license.
There's no limit on shore digging, you could just dig if you got a limit.
Yes.
Well, they've actually got more time, on any.
That's kind of great.
So that was something.
I want a lot of time there.
You could do what they do with the shore process, kind of 2 hours after, well, they do days.
It's really hard to regulate it though, John.
No,
I mean, it's with everybody in a boat, you can go down to the shoreline and look out and see, but the shore diggers, it's really hard to.
And excuse me, is it enforcement had issues that you could relate to us? Because like I said, Anna mentioned that a lot of dealers were reporting shore digging, whatever.
Yeah, it's about 50%.
Did you follow that up and see if that was just bad reporting or is
It,
that?
it was definitely bad reporting. I can verify there were people here that were reported that I know are in fact not shore digging, so.
So if you don't mind, participation level, what are you guys are seeing with this new change, or if you can?
I wouldn't say that there's been any increase. I'd say the same people that shore dig that area are still shore digging that area. I don't know that we've necessarily seen a bump. We more have issues on closed days with certain people going into the area and taking a recreational limit and then trying to, claim it as a commercial and tag it elsewhere. We see that more on closed days, dealing with that issue where they're taking multiple recreational limits in a day. Certainly the late at night, or evening diggers, that's an issue because they're gonna have it for more than 8 hours if they sell it the next morning. It's hard to get them to, all they have to do is change their tag, right? Write a different date and time on and bring it to the shop. So really probably the only way would be the checking the internal temperature, but that's not something, if it's tagged appropriately, unless we see them with it and see them store it somewhere. But again, that's and it's incredibly challenging. There are a few problems out there, but we have job security and we know who some of them are, and we certainly try to keep an eye on them.
So your issue probably is when there's a low tide at 3 PM or something like that, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Probably what we're talking about,
Yeah, we're there for a while.
us to try to sell out, and get,
I'm still trying to digest, I get 5 hours in there. Should I?
they can get 7 hours if they're tall, like you. You can probably get 7 hours.
You think that'll help?
I don't know.
From my
It was certainly
observation,
brought up in our membership meeting very vocally. Guys thought it was unfair, but we really don't know. And what kind of language we could put into,
Pick territory.
yeah.
And it was brought up numerous times how it is not fair that we've only allotted. And we have to be out within X, 3 hours, that, no matter what the conditions are doing, no matter what the tide's doing, the whole thing, so. That was a big issue.
I think we're just gonna make it like a 4 p.m. strict. Nothing after 4 kind of thing.
Well, the thing that worries me, to be honest, moreover than like your issue, is if that stuff does make it to market somewhere, somebody buys it,
Yeah,
we're screwed.
yeah,
So it's an issue that really does need to, it's a little bit bigger than just say, you brought up a great issue, but it is a bigger issue for us, because if they close the area down, to Jim's point,
tonight.
it would be a nightmare, yeah. With the amount of production we're seeing out of area A and area B,
Back to the old,
that
rules.
closed down, that would be.
They can sure take the same 3 hours we do.
And most of those guys that do stuff like that, they don't care about the industry.
No, it wouldn't be just me doing recalls, that would be
Oh, I get it.
twins, that would be
Oh, I get it.
up everywhere,
Industry.
the whole state would be doing recalls.
Yeah, so it is an issue.
You're the keeper of the gate. You're the one that has to say yes or no, so.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, if we don't change the policy, I'm just gonna make my own policy, which is, completely up to you guys, I'm just letting you guys know.
Well, that,
Yeah, but again, like if he doesn't buy them and they
No, I-
find an avenue to put them on the market, somebody will buy them, that's
Right.
that's my concern.
Right.
I mean, it's something.
Have you thought about maybe an alternate cooler or something on the premise that you can?
Legally, I'm not allowed to do that. I mean, I don't know, I know some people do, I don't know how they get away with it, but I've asked health
Well,
department.
actually, that was what the health department recommended.
They told me no.
Because they
I've asked-
allow somebody to go into a shop because they're not HACCP trained. That was kind of the ruling.
Yeah,
But a cooler that's not in the shop was available, but.
told me no. But,
That would still mean somebody would have to man that cooler too, because again, if I'm throwing my stuff in the cooler and then somebody comes in after me, how do I know that they're not?
That's where the truck, that's where you got it.
So
They
that.
don't give the key to certain people.
And in regards to Brennan, he's, got so many different people in the
Right.
shop, it's not a small.
Right. There's difference 1 or 2 as opposed
Yeah,
to 8 or
exactly.
9.
Yeah, I don't want my stuff.
2 in, 1 out.
Going in at night, put his stuff in there.
yeah.
So is it really, unfortunately, I mean, we did discuss this at the membership meeting and we didn't really know an answer to it. How to change it other than to go back to the old rules. Right?
So it works for me.
So, yeah, we didn't, last year was the first year it was allowed, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Last spring when we.
last spring.
Do you want this to be on the agenda for our February meeting?
I think it's a good idea, because I do think it's a major concern. to be
I
honest.
just, I'll throw out a quick one, but just like to, since they get more time, if you just did it on the days that it was open from sunrise till noon or something. Cause they're gonna get double the time when it does hit them, but then half the time they won't get it because it'll be tied in the afternoon. Just an idea, like.
So one of the guys that, one of the guys that we're talking about, do you wanna pitch that to him?
I don't wanna pitch it to him.
I'm just telling you, like. Cover both the time difference situation and the situation we're talking here and the health department situation. It's all one, it's just like, you can shoot from that and it's like, you're gonna get more time some days, you're gonna get less time other days, but everyone's on the same thing and for public health.
Yeah, I think some sort of time limit has to be.
I think we should get to this in February, if you guys can bring it up at your membership meeting before that, and maybe come up with some type of idea, send this.
Yeah.
Well, when we brought it up at the meeting, Katie, basically there was a bunch of really outspoken guys that were having it about what I voiced. That basically they had much more time available to them as we do, but it didn't really get much further than that. And I don't know if it will again, we'll bring it up.
Then, if
but-
you wouldn't mind just putting it on your
Yeah,
agenda, and
we'll
then
bring it up.
if you feel like it should be something on February.
And Anna, we have better numbers on the actual number of tide diggers accessing that area for the February meeting.
Absolutely, yes. We'll run through all of that again.
That'd be helpful
I'll
too,
see if,
Are we talking about 3 guys? Or are we talking about, 33 guys?
Is there a way that you, like, on CGIS that they put it in?
I could, yeah, I mean, it's confidential, but I can, see who, it's reported out as whether it was harvested from a boat or shore digging. Cause under the vessel name,
Oh.
you have to report whether it was shore digging or not. So, yeah, it showed up when I looked at the landings. to assess because of this change in the shore digging access. I was curious, is that, you know, represented in the landings, and it showed about 50% of people were harvesting from the shore, which obviously
They're being
is a
categorized incorrect.
Yeah.
Their boats not being hauled.
So yeah, that came up. So yeah, we can definitely, I'll look at that again more closely and go over that information in February.
Next.
Yes, so
I had sent some other comments. I don't know if you put those up there or,
They're coming.
thank you.
So on here, we have a list of all the public comment that have been submitted, so it's a combination of, the association in the first three, and then, Mr. Boyd's are 4 through 7 that have been tabled from the last couple of meetings, so if we just want to run down the list, that works for everyone here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you want to present.
Yeah, if I may, and as I said my comments, this is for discussion with the idea of maybe in the February, Fish and Wildlife will feel more comfortable. But last spring, when we did the summer and winter scheduling, the late winter, we talked about switching to an hour counting system. And at that time, Fish and Wildlife wasn't feeling comfortable without the data that, to understand, what we're asking and the implications of it. We only had a couple openings then, and we really hadn't got the data. We have the data now. And basically, a 2-hour opening, in February or March, given the 2-hour instead of 3-hour opening, and given the fact that there's 70, 80, 90 guys as opposed to 160, 170, our production was basically half of what a normal 3-hour opening would be in summertime. So the idea that we eventually gonna have to count these hours, count these days, we're asking that we can switch to an hour system. So 6 2-hour openings does not equal 6 regular full-time 3-hour openings. And I mentioned we do that for Greenwich. And that would just give us more flexibility, which is what we're looking for last spring, but we understand that the data wasn't there yet. So now that we have more data in, we'd like to look going forward into the counting the hours. So if we're given, for the year, given 24, 26, whatever the days are, 3 hours, you turn those into hours. And that would give us a lot more flexibility. Maybe we'd be doing 2 hours in September, October, November to spread it out, or it just would be helpful for us. So just want to make a discussion now, and we could just move on, and with you understanding that you understand this is where we're going. And I appreciate the fact that you had switched to hours when you did some of the reporting and stuff. So it looks like you might be kind of moving that way. So if there's no more discussion on that one, I don't want to keep everybody here too long. But anybody want to discuss the going to hours? Or
I think absolutely we should go to hours. We should be looking, even when we start looking at going to a full year cycle, that Jeff brought up a couple meetings ago, we should be scheduling January through December for a whole year, and we should be looking at the number of hours we can get up there. I said earlier, we need to radically change what we're doing, because this industry is on a steep decline, and we gotta do something different. We need more hours up in the Providence River, and in my view, the only way to do that is to look at hours, not days, and get more hours up there.
Well, I'd like to dovetail off of that a little bit, Jim, because look, I know when we started up there a few years back, Connor was here, he had put forward that it was the hours. He made mention it was hours, and that we could use those hours flexibly when we were writing proposals. Somehow, somewhere, somehow that then disappeared, but in the last couple of years, but to Jim's point, if we did do the hours, whatever those hours were, we were allotted, we would have more flexibility and actually less impact on the market if we strategically plan those hours out.
That's right.
So you know, if it's a softer time, we can cut back on the hours, but make it more days. So it's actually better for us because, and I've mentioned this before, if we had, say that could be the bump to my day, I work 5 hours a day. And if I went up there for an hour or two and then went to work after that, work my regular day, it would really greatly increase my production. So those hours going to that point, I think we should go to hours, most definitely, instead of counting days. Yeah.
You're right, you know, when we first were in discussions of how to open this area, how to do it in days versus hours, and when we were presenting the simulation of what that harvest would look like up there, and we were throwing at everyone, do you want a 2-hour opening, a 3-hour opening, a 6-hour opening, whatever, you know, and you're right, we were talking in terms of hours. And so we have no problem, you know, converting back to doing that in hours, in terms of hours with the scheduling. I think that is very much something that everyone's going on together.
That's
It
great.
makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
great.
And also, I just want to address a point about doing the yearly schedule. I think everyone is in agreement that is what everyone would like to see, you know, it's a lot of effort and work and everyone time getting these meetings together and figuring out these schedules, it's a lot, and I think this would be fantastic to get everything figured out once a year. you
Once a
know?
year.
And so the division is happy to move in that direction as well. You know, we're gonna have our scheduling for the May through fall coming up in February, April, February, March, April, in that period. And then starting in the fall, move in the direction of doing the yearly scheduling. So when we meet in the fall for the winter harvest for all the management areas, we work on figuring out the
Full-
harvest for the full year.
So can we add to that somewhere somehow in the language where maybe midway through, we can revisit any unutilized hours that we say didn't get, say 6 months into the year, we had a very wet year. So we're gonna lose a lot of hours. I don't wanna throw those on the table. I don't wanna let those go by. If we can at all, you know, so even if they were divvied up, however, well, I don't even wanna get into that discussion, but however they divvied up what we, so is there some way midway through the year, we can kind of do like a, hey, let's check on the hours and let's check on the production rate and make sure we're all in.
A reassessment, a
Yeah.
check-in, partway through, absolutely, that's completely reasonable, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really heartened by this and appreciate the thought and hopefully we'll move that way. One thing, this thing is such a bouncing ball. The first year we opened it, 2021, we had that incredible rain. And even though we had a very aggressive, way too aggressive schedule, we were fortunate that we didn't utilize it. So the next year, I went to the Fish and Wildlife Marine Fishery Council, we went there and said, listen, let's not count the days. Let's put a schedule that everybody thinks is appropriate for the industry, right? That we can live with, that, you know, does all the things that we've been talking about tonight and just run with it. Unfortunately, 2022 was the drought. So we went with this not counting the days and we ended up with 28 days, which left everybody with a red butt and very concerned because we went from 5 million to 10 million production. I will say that 10 million, though you can see the dip, it bounced right back 2 years later. So I maybe I'm asking for too much since we already got a nice response, but I think we should do it like Greenwich. We should say, okay, starting in February, 1 day a week, or, you know, all the way till December. And don't count the days. Nature will take care of the days. You'll have a 2022, but you also have a 2021. And it seems like the 2022 was the outlier, because since then we've been only 15 days we've been utilizing for 3 years. So it happens in Greenwich. You know, Dave will tell you some years you get 65–70% of the days in Greenwich. In some years you get 40% or 45%. Some years you have ice and everybody's frozen in and it's open and it doesn't really matter. In some years you don't. So I think it would be easier for everybody. And if DEM can understand, maybe put a cap on it after 25 or something, you know, but I think we should set a schedule and that the industry needs that's, you know, you can, support. 2-hour openings will be very helpful for that. And just kind of let it run.
Yeah, I mean, I think moving in the direction of, this is the set amount of hours. Once you know, determine what is the best, if you're saying like 1 day a week, whatever. We can do a combination of reassess halfway through and also have like a cap. For once we reach this many hours in this area, this is when it closes, you know, and we can work through.
Well,
the
we have a cap
scenarios.
now. I mean, there is a cap. What I'm talking about is not having.
Oh, okay, I thought you mentioned a cap.
No, that was kind of the whole thing. The first year, we had a cap and didn't use anything. The next year, we convinced not to have a cap, and of course, that was the drought year. So Fish and Wildlife said, we have to have a cap because of that, but then the next 3 years have all been 15, 15, 15. So, you know, it was unfortunate that 1 year that we did this change, we had the drought and we had that issue. So, you know, that's how we run Greenwich. Greenwich has been a successful, you know, thing for 45 years. How we've been doing that. It's kind of similar now with the E, because you have all these clams up the river setting seed down, just like we have Greenwich and Apponaug. You know, so it's a self-sustaining area. So, you know, I don't know if that's what we're gonna put on the agenda, but just for thought. That I think the industry needs to say, okay, we have this area from February to October. You know, and we can depend on that right through, regardless of what happens. We're only doing once a week. It's, you know, it's not that big a deal.
Isn't this a fall discussion?
Yeah.
Correct.
This is the.
Well, I try to take advantage of it. Well, it might be a February discussion too, you know, it might be, if we come up with a number, it might be, maybe we don't wanna have it.
I don't want to know.
How,
Revisit it.
the last dock assessment for the river was 2019, I believe 18 or 19.
Yes.
Is the state, oh, I don't know if it's a question for you or Scott, but it is, I think, look like we're gonna have a stock assessment for the next time we talk about this.
It's a very good question, and we actually met today with Jay about all the stock shops and stuff, because, you know, as you know, he's the one that ran it before. And, staff members at VMF are moving in the direction of getting that updated and getting it running. There's been a couple of hiccups along the way, but I think it's very close to being like up and running. And so our goal is to have something to share with you this winter. It might not be the final version, but to have it completed, peer reviewed and everything by next fall.
Okay.
For when we set the yearly schedule.
That sounds great.
So that's the plan of action.
I say probably
And I,
26.
you want to give something to say?
No, perfect on that. I just wanted to just jump in real quickly, something Dave said, and I'm not sure we'd be able to like revisit midstream without going through the process again, right? So you're talking about losing days and things. So one thing I just started to think about that you might want to think about is sort of these sub periods. And the ability to, if the number of hours is not used in a sub period, right into regulation, that they roll over into the next subsequent sub period, or something like we do with other fisheries in the sub period. That way, you don't get to the end of the year and be like, we didn't use all these days and now we've got to try to dump them into a rollover. So just might be something to think about when we move to that sort of annual cycle, that you have these periods that you can roll over from one to the next within the year without trying to go back through a process to change dates and things like that. So
So you're saying okay, so if we didn't say, just so I get it straight in my mind, so if we use 15 days out of the 25 that we're allotted or whatever, then we would roll those into the next years? Is that?
oh, no, I was thinking sub periods within the year.
Oh,
So
within
if
the
you
year.
broke it
Oh,
into
okay.
maybe 3 sub periods, right? Like, I don't know, spring, summer, fall. And if you didn't realize all your days in one of those sub periods, they kind of roll into you could set it up so it would roll into the next sub period where you don't have to, because what we were talking about is almost like a revisiting of the schedule if you didn't use it. That's where you'd have a higher probability of realizing your days for the entire year.
Understood. So any proposals that we do on that line, maybe that would be the language.
It might be worth just, and we'll talk about it.
Well, if we
you
do it
know,
year round though,
Okay.
do you really need to do that? Cause they just naturally go to the next sub period. The hours they don't use. We're doing a year round schedule.
Yeah, you
Go to the next year.
Writing, so.
Because
It would go to the next year. What I'm saying is that you could kind of roll them into and keep fishing and use all your days for a year with a sub-period approach, you know what I mean? Like right now with finfish, if you, underperform, right, that gets rolled over into the subsequent sub-periods for the rest of the year, so that you're not, you know, either losing fish or trying to catch fish at the end of the year that you can't, something like that. So this would be something similar to that without revisiting it, you know, through this process, right? Convening the panel, saying we need to make a change to the regulation because we're not getting our days. Just something, you know.
Just kind of streamlining it.
Yeah, just, it's an opportunity to utilize your days throughout the year, better than trying to get to the end of the year and then roll over, and then next thing you know, you've got a bunch of days the next year, and you don't get those, and they roll over. It's just, you know, I think it'd be better for the industry if you had, you know, you want to utilize all your days on a given year, really, and then move to the next year and set it up again. Just something to think about. We can talk about it, sort of when we get to that point, you know, this winter, we talk about, you know, how we set up our schedule.
well, I've been having a hard time, but maybe it would be something like, okay, we haven't used up the days, but maybe start early in December for 2-hour openings. As opposed to waiting to the middle of the month for.
I guess I was thinking of, okay, you have 20 hours from January through April. But I don't, just bear with me because I don't know. 20 hours, right? And you only get 10 of them. Then those 10 that you didn't get roll into this next sub period in the summertime. Instead of setting the schedule, not getting the days, and then having to revisit it through the regulatory process, right? You try to rewrite your regulations on the days, on more days to fish. It just seems like you know, an approach where you maximize your days. If you missed it in the sub period, you get to the next one. If you miss those, it goes to the next one. You kind of.
We need to just carefully think about how those sub periods are set out in the course of the year, so that,
Yes.
you know, you don't want to, for example, get it to the 4th of July holiday and within a sub period, you've already used up the days, and then you don't get any until like August 1st or something. That would be a disaster. So we have to be strategic.
Yeah,
in how
I guess I was thinking about like not having more days than you need in a sub period. I was thinking about just kind of breaking it hours and days.
Yes.
Down to, yes.
Agreed. We just have to be very strategic as to how we think.
And that increases your chances of realizing the days during the year in that scenario. So, and it's beneficial.
Okay, I guess the second one was, and we talked about it, Jeff brought up the last one, switching to a January 1st scheduling. So that sounds like something for a September meeting that Jerry mentioned, but we certainly support that. It'd just be easier. And as Jeff mentioned, you're really looking at the early part of the year is a little more critical than maybe October or something like that. But, okay. This was brought up at the membership meeting, and I actually felt bad. At the last, I think, February meeting, maybe January meeting here, if we had one, we brought up about doing allowing steamer harvest. And I think you guys said, okay, we'll look into it and this and that, and we forgot about it, honestly, with all the other stuff going on. And it was reminded at a membership meeting that, you know, that this particular gentleman and just the industry is looking for this. So can we open up, you know, this area, maybe in, you know, the February meeting, we talk about it, that for steamers, you know, it'd be, even if you don't know what's there, I mean, it's a 3 bushel limit, people will look for them. I don't think you get overfishing, then we don't even know what is there, so I don't really understand why we're holding back, not allowing steamer production during the time of this opening.
We talked about this today when we were.
Okay, we talked about it last week, 2 weeks ago.
So, so we chatted about this, and we would like to do some sort of assessment up there. And so obviously we have the dredge survey that doesn't capture all the areas that steamers could be located up in that area. And what we would like to suggest is to do an assessment with you folks. We go up there and, you know, we design a survey. We incorporate that survey and we go and do some survey work up there to see what's actually available as a resource. Because at this point in time, we don't have anything that, we don't have any data on what those densities are like.
You're gonna get volunteers to crawl around in the mud? In this room?
To go dig, like, we get a crew of people that want,
Well, I know one guy that I'll be talking to about
okay,
volunteering. Well, okay, so that's something to set up, and we have to do it fairly early, because if we wanna get it for a summertime. I mean, is that something where you can just decree that steamers are now available, or we have to go through this whole process?
Well,
Like,
we-
not the process, like SAP, NFC, I mean, is you holding back on steamer production, is that something you can just change by saying we allow steamer in now?
So what we envisioned is an act, like a fishery dependent survey, first and foremost, before we just open it up, we don't know what the status of the resources up there, so the idea was that, okay, we don't have the means to go and do a steamer survey, and if people are interested and are capable of digging steamers, then we would accompany them, and that's how we would get our information after we kind of developed, a statistically valid, survey methodology. Like, it's not, and that was the idea, it was kind of industry based, if somebody wants to go up there and dig with steamers, but that would have to happen before we just sort
Well,
of.
we
said, okay,
participate in the survey for the transplants, so it's something that
Yeah,
we're,
so
that we do, and we're not, Jeff, do you have any thoughts on this? as
I
far
I
as-
just have a quick question.
Oh.
Is this something that people are encountering soft shell clams? Or is it just, we should open it up because there might be some and let's,
The latter.
yeah. So it's not like people are encountering them and saying, hey, there's a resource up here.
Well, they're not trying, I mean, that's part of it, I mean, if you
Yeah.
can't get them, you're not gonna try.
Right.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Has there ever been a steamer survey in any other part of the bay?
Dennis is not here, but I think he did some.
Let me get point.
So like, no, my kind of the crux of my question is. Say from A section to the lower bay, all these areas are open for steamer. Fishing. But I don't ever remember any kind of survey or anything to say it's open, we're not gonna allow it, in other words.
I think the resource was in a lot better shape 10 years ago or more, right? And so I don't know if that played a factor in sort of the
Yeah.
less of a need for survey work, right?
It's essentially self-managing
Yeah.
to the point where. If you wanna go do it, I used to like to do it, I'm too old to do it now. You go on the shore, you crawl around, maybe you get enough to eat, maybe you get enough to sell, you know what I mean?
My bag,
And
my
if you
hamstrings.
learn the hard way that there's nothing there, then you're not gonna go back and do it,
Yeah.
I mean.
Okay. I'm not gonna get this 100% correct. There is a clam disease that has killed steamers basically around the world. There's a special name for it, or might know it, but there's sets of neoplasia, that's it. And steamers, they got it, they haven't built up a resistance to it. And once they come forward, like most surviving animals do, they'll find some survivors, they'll spawn, there'll be more steamers. There just aren't steamers anywhere. You go in a grocery store anywhere, look for steamers, you can see them, buy them, because they might not be there next year. There's main steamers, but the guys there aren't digging them because they're going Blue Ridge, whatever, but the population of steamers is really. Anybody disagree with that?
No.
Doctor?
Right. I just don't understand
Caused by a virus.
what you guys are trying to protect. If there's nothing there, you know what I mean, you want an assessment. But you don't know if there's anything there, and if there's not enough there. I don't understand what you're trying to protect it, by not letting you guys dig steamers.
I would say if there's a resource that's starting to, make some,
Recover.
as Jeff had mentioned, that's generally how that happens, right? If you get some animals that can withstand disease and they spawn, and then you get this resistant, animal. So I mean, we don't really have an understanding of what that status is. Like, if there's some limited resource there, I'd be hesitant as a fisheries manager to say, let's just go in and grab it, right now, up in that area. I mean, and that's why we thought this approach would be, something.
If you did some kind of a study thing, do it for 1 year, and you see what kind of steamers came in for 1 year. or for 6 months, you know what I mean, for the summer months, just see what comes in. If there's nothing comes in, then you know there isn't anything there. And if there's, you know, everybody, you're only allowed 3 bushels for whatever it is. And to his point, that'd be better than any kind of survey we could help you with. No, that's not, the guys, we really trying to look for them, you know, and the guys that are good at it.
Wouldn't that be somewhat tide dependent though, so we're circling
Yeah.
back into the diet thing again?
Correct.
So we're right back at shore digging.
Well, can't you do it by boat? Would it be the 3 hours or the 2 hours? I mean, a lot of guys go by boat, dive off the boats when Connecticut was hot. You know, they weren't shore digging, they're all jumping off the boat.
It was short.
With the, you know, there was that, actually, when there was that thick thing, it was going.
I was on it.
Yeah. That's the creative.
Yeah, one guy taking, one guy just don't understand the protecting. I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen anybody come in with any steamers, you know what I mean, they'll cheat. You know what I mean, if somebody gets a handful or whatever, you know, they'll say something, but, you know.
Sure. Eric.
Jerry, I think that's exactly the, maybe the status or, you know, what we're trying to protect is that it was around 2011, might have been 2012, but I think it was 2011 when steamers, like Jeff said, really, you know, probably from New Hampshire, but some of it extending Maine down through Long Island Sound just crashed. And even in the spawner sanctuaries, in the coastal ponds where we used to have densities that were 15 to 40, you can dig down and just find a layer of closed steamers, they're all dead. And it's thought that they died from the erosion, which especially in areas with high densities is really transmittable and it hasn't come back. And so that's something we always ask people when we're on the water, you know, if you're just talking, especially the wreck diggers, you know, have you seen any, you know, we've seen them come back and people say, yeah, you know, I got a spot, I've seen some there, but there hasn't been this research. And so often the way that population rebuilds, and like Jeff mentioned, is you get some animals that have some resistance to that. So because the Providence River has been closed, and, you know, whether or not the conditions that are allowing cohogs up there to do well, if that transfers to steamers, there's the potential that maybe that is a refuge where you could have steamers with a spawning stock such as them. So I think without information, we're hesitant to say, hey, if that's occurring, let's go remove them, because that might be your chance to have steamer food down. But I don't think we're saying, you know, if there was a resource there, it couldn't be harvested, but without knowing if there's a resource there with the status.
Or if it's there, while it's available, before they die, they're just gonna die. You know what I mean? So you don't have a chance to, you know, to harvest them. If they have the disease and then the following season, they're not there anymore.
Yeah, if they have the disease, they're dead, so, like, very quickly.
Well, you know,
So
I just, it's gonna, you know, it's not gonna be a year, because every time you do a study, it's at least 3 to 5 years.
But I think it's also, maybe it's the proximity to the triangle, right? You know, the densities that were in that area, and then they're, you know, they're gone, and once it's gone, so.
Triangle, Green, Greenwich.
No, Connecticut triangle.
Oh, okay.
It has opened the steamer homes.
Has anybody in this room seen wild steamers anywhere in the last year?
Yes,
Yeah, there's some coming in, but they're.
there's some coming in.
My nephew actually goes over there, we were talking about the triangle,
Yeah.
and that's where he gets them.
You know,
You got a good price for them, so you don't have to catch a lot, you know, was it like $3.50 a pound or something there?
Yeah, I think they're getting like $3.50 a pound. Guys come in with, you know, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, something like that.
Better than nothing.
When they go out to shop glass
It's
and.
nice to see local Rhode Island soft shell clams.
That's good.
So basically saying if there's not a lot there, then you don't wanna open it, if it's as deep, you'll consider it, that kind of.
Yeah, and not quite in those terms, I think, you know, Eric just making the point that what value any resource in that area has to, you know, settlement and recruitment in other places is unknown. So it would be kind of, you know, to go in there without some understanding of that, the status of that resource and just allow harvest, would probably, without some understanding. And that's why we were thinking that if people are seeing them and we could, you know, kind of, again, kind of develop this fishery dependent survey where we're going out with fishermen and collecting our information while you guys are undergoing your normal fishing operations. But that was a way for us to collect information rather than, you know, not having the staff to sort of go up there and dig for the day more or less. And, you know, that was just the approach, but Again,
Okay.
not having some understanding of the resource is difficult, you know, to-
And you really have to go all the way up the river too, because there might be steamers above the line that are sending seed down, you know, so it's a comprehensive study is certainly needed.
but I think,
So-
I mean, we hear the,
So we'll discuss that at the February meeting and
yeah, we'll think
we'll
about it.
talk about my membership and see if I can get volunteers or in the past.
Yeah, if there's people.
Compensate them for spending a day with you guys and getting wet. That's it for me, unless so many people wanna talk more about the steamer harvest. The other one, number 4, is pretty much Jim's brought it up, and so he can take the floor, he doesn't mind.
Anna, thank you. First of all, thanks for responding to my email, and I just want to publicly say Anna was very responsive, and I certainly appreciate that. Let me take these in reverse order, they'll go quick. First of all, I think everyone knows that Senator Whitehouse and Senator Scott put in this bipartisan legislation proposed to create this shellfish task force on the East Coast. Government has been shut down for 42 days. If we pass a continuing resolution, it's passed to the Senate, if it goes to the House today or tonight or tomorrow, government reopens, that gets us into the end of January, so there's gonna be lots of budget discussions. I don't expect we're gonna see the light of day of this task force discussion until the spring at probably the earliest. And even then, we have no idea how this task force is gonna be put together, other than how it's outlined. We don't know if there'll be representation from Rhode Island on the task force, that remains to be seen. South Coast Wind, the CRMC has last year issued its federal consistency determination, federal consistency issuance on South Coast Wind. The department has issued its permit to South Coast Wind. But CRMC has not yet issued its state permit for the cable to come up into state waters from offshore, up the Secana River, landward, up on top of Portsmouth, and then back into Mount Hope Bay, and then the connection up to Brayton Point. The utility siting board there this last week issued their permit. So the only thing left right now is CRMC's state permit, so that's still in the works. We're hoping as part of that, that there will be some agreement with South Fork for mitigation and compensation towards shellfish resources in the Secana River and anything limited within Mount Hope Bay. As you pointed out, John, once that cable comes off of Portsmouth, it drops down pretty deep. And any resources that are up in the Secana are gonna be probably in shallow water, in presently closed waters to harvesting up by Island Park. So let's hope that something comes out of that towards mitigation. What the Shellfishermen's Association had submitted in their comments to the CRMC on the state permit side during their public notice was that we had asked that South Fork put forward $20,000 a year for a 20-year period to go to DEM to handle for funds to be used for transplants. So whatever comes out of that, we don't know yet, but that hopefully will be in the state permit. Number 5, Providence River dredging. So most of the folks who are working on Providence River dredging for the Corps are civilian engineers, planners, research scientists, etc. They're not working with it. And they haven't been working for 42 or 43 days. So nothing's happening as far as I know in terms of Providence River, but I want to stress the urgency here, particularly to the division. The Corps wants to start dredging the CAD cells next November. That's when the dredge window opens for 2026. They want to start creating the CAD cell next November. We've got to remove that resource in approximately 63 acres, 50 acres of the first CAD cell and 13 acres for the connecting channel between the CAD cell and the Providence River. Based on the quahog survey data that the division has done for the resource out there, there's somewhere between 6.5 and 8 million quahogs in that 63 acres. The Corps recognizes that that resource has to be removed and not destroyed through dredging. What we're advocating for is that all of that resource, if, and here's the big if it tests okay for human consumption, so no PAHs at a high level or high action levels, no heavy metals at high action levels, etc. If they test okay for human consumption, we want that resource removed and put into management areas like Greenwich Bay. So that it could be available for the following winter's harvest. But the urgency here is we have 12 months from right now for all the logistics, funding through the feds to make this happen and get that resource relocated. And whether it tests okay for human consumption, that it can go into management areas for harvest at a later date, like during the winter periods, or on the flip side, if it doesn't test okay for human consumption, we want that resource at least relocated somewhere else on the Providence River to continue being a viable resource that contributes to the benefit of our industry downriver. So one way or another, we've got a freaking lot of work to do in 12 months to get the logistics to figure out how to get that much resource moved in a relatively short period of time. So I'm just laying it out there. I hope that when the Corps gets back to work, that the division is actively working with the Corps to make this happen quick, because we got 12 months, people.
Can I let?
Sure, can I give a quick, I'm sorry, yep. So Jim, thanks for that summary and bringing it up. So some folks, I don't know how many, but there are some folks working at the Corps, including someone that works on this project. So we did get an update from them this week. Just some like minor updates here. So right now their timeline, and I think the timeline only gets more extended as time passes, like, you know, the shutdown here. But right now they're looking at the earliest they could start dredging is the spring of 27. So still a short timeline, but it's not November of 26. So we'll take that breather if we can get it. And right now they're still finalizing their draft dredge management plan. So that's a document that you guys saw and provided comments on. So they took those comments, they're trying to incorporate them and address them. And what they wind up with is a final draft. And then that final draft, although they haven't finalized the exact number, it sounds like they're much closer to what you know, what Riza suggested. It might be the cost to actually relocate some of those plants. So that's closer to like 200. So what that funds
200,000?
yeah, is designed to do, and they also have backup funding, but they've been trying to look at logistically some other aspects of that. Typically, those funds aren't allocated until the construction starts. And so, like Jim said, some of those funds need to be upfront so that they can support the pathology and et cetera. And they're trying to move those so that they're in a different part of the project. And what they've conveyed to us is that some of those funds, not all of them, but some of them would be available. And we have to, there's more logistics that have to work out.
When would they funds, because that's what we're talking about, you know, to get the money to test them, we're talking November last time.
Yeah, so they said spring of 26. And so we'll meet with them again in the next 2 weeks to try to get a better understanding of, you know, what is that timeline. But I think what the Corps has been really consistent on is that they, you know, they appreciate those comments, they realize the impacts, that they're working to try to ensure they will have the funds needed to test and relocate that resource, that they're trying to get they will have some of the funds available so that we can do the required pathology testing. And so that is, like you said, Jim, for human consumption, and there's, you know, metal, the other contaminated, but the other side of it is the pathology, similar to the, when we talked about the neoplasia that affected soft shell clams, that can also affect cohogs. And so if we're going to start to relocate them throughout the bay, there also has to be testing to ensure that neoplasia isn't present. And that's, we talk about that when we do the transplants, right? Whether or not there's a need to do neoplasia testing. In the last time there was transplants out of area E, that type of pathology was combined.
Have we found neoplasia in anything other than aquaculture farms in the state?
In Rhode Island.
Yeah.
It has not been detected.
You haven't found it anywhere but the aquaculture, a couple aquaculture sites, I thought.
I can address that. I'm one of those sites. I'm not very happy about it, but I'm one of those sites that has this. I've had it for a number of years. We've discussed it in numerous talks and blah, blah, blah. I just got my last pathology report back like 2 weeks ago, I think, from Roger Williams, which tests my product like, well, I don't know how many times, oysters and clam, 0. I don't have it. What happened? I don't know.
You got rid of the other one.
I don't know. I get dermo, then I have a ton of dermo, then I have none. I don't know. I don't.
But
I'm a little skeptical.
My point being, it's really been found, mostly in the the only place it's been found.
That's what I wanted to really talk about real quick, is we're forgetting about an issue. Providence was the truman capital of the world. Providence River was closed for like forever until recently. We're going in there dredging the river and we're stirring all that stuff up. Hopefully there's a base study of, okay, the clams there are okay to sell now. What if all this mishmash gets washed into the clams that exist now? And is there money put aside for a contingency plan? If they're screwing up $1 million worth of product, is somebody gonna compensate for it? How's that going to work? And I think Dave has the answer.
Not the answer, but at least a bit of information. When Providence River opened in 2021, prior to that, the resources spent a lot of time doing a literature review and testing cohogs from the area that's now area E. And the gist of it is that the cohogs that were tested in the available data indicates that in that part of the Providence River, levels of metals, PAHs, PCBs, way less than a tenth, in some cases 1/100th of the caution levels that the FDA issues. So the lower part of the river has been pretty thoroughly tested. It passed very easily.
Good.
Edgewood Shoals may be different, but there is a lot of data from the 70s and 80s on metals, some PAHs and PCBs, but mostly metals from that part of the river. So there's something to look.
There's an assessment in the Corps EA on Providence River. And they did sampling in Edgewood Shoals, and there are some elevated levels of PCBs and PAHs and some metals. I think chromium was one of them. But they're just barely above levels that would be considered actionable. So it's reasonable to assume that with, dredging done properly, that there should not be contamination 2 miles downriver in area E, but we're still cautionary about that. But Eric, just 2 things quick. You mentioned the Corps at the earliest would begin dredging in the spring of 2027. Is that correct?
That's what they said, and they thought there would be
So
time
how-
to do the transplants prior to that.
Okay.
So, but I don't have the month, I don't know if they're looking at this spring, May, this spring, like March.
Because,
so-
I mean, obviously, there's a time of year restriction for dredging in the state, and it's usually November until the end of March.
Yeah, so.
So they can't be dredging after March because they'd be violating DEM's own rules.
No, so for this project, and it's in the table's been modified, but it was in that draft dredge management plan that because this project is so long and it can't be done in 3 months, there's kind of a pretty complex table where they can work in different areas at different times. When they actually start to dig the dredgewood, Edward Shoals CAD cells, that's something that they will start and they will keep going until it's.
And just one last point, you mentioned the Corps appears to be able to, they think they're gonna be able to have 200K to do transplant.
Yes, so what they.
That's half of what's gonna be needed to move upwards of 8 million logs.
Yeah, I saw in the association's letter, it was around 275 was the value that was
It was
offered.
like, I believe it was like 360 something.
So they.
That was, I'm sorry, that was,
Yeah.
that was just, that was a back of the envelope calculation based on the volume of hogs that came out of East Greenwich in the spring. What was paid out to the number of shellfishermen that participated, extrapolated to Providence River. To that potential volume of resource, somewhere between 6.5 and 8 million.
So the other thing they have is their contingency fund. So when you think of the cost of this project, I don't know what the cost is. It's,
It's
ten-
multi-millions.
tens of millions of dollars. So when we're talking about 250 rather than 300. They said they have assured us that they have the funds.
Okay.
And what, so
That's
some of
good
the
to hear.
things we'll need to do leading up to this is, obviously we'll have to do the pathology work. We'll also have to develop, if they, let's assume that they're suitable for being relocated. Have to develop a plan of, where they're going to go. I think the one thing, and we'll see it hopefully come this spring and summer, once it's refined, is as that stock assessment is conducted. There may be the opportunity for us to try to tease out how important either that portion is, or what happens if you do those removals. So like we talked about, 2022, 21, when when it was a really dry year, and you guys basically got all your days in the river and you harvested around 10 million pieces. So, if we're moving, essentially relocating all of those clams, right, in addition to the normal harvest, that's almost 2 years worth of harvest coming out of there at once. And so the question is, what does that do to future harvest, right? Do some of those clams need to be retained in other spawning areas or somewhere else in the river? Or can you, I don't know if you can harvest that like twice an annual harvest level without a future impact, but that's something that, they're thinking about with the stock assessment. These spatial components can get pretty tricky, but that's something that we want to try to look at so that we can work with you all to try to figure out what is the best, path forward.
So if I may, if we're looking at Greenwich, that's available after May 1st. Because it closes down, and that's usually when we have our transplants and do that stuff. So it looks like next summer, we should spend the summer up there transplanting. Try to remove, those things 1 day a week, have a transplant, or 2 days a week, or whatever, and the whole summer do that, because that's a lot, as you said, that's a lot of shellfish to move. So I guess the point being, we gotta start thinking that May 1st, something's gonna start happening as far as moving the shellfish out. Because you can't do it next fall unless, because Greenwich will be opening up soon, and so point being that we really gotta think about the transplant starting up relatively quickly.
And I guess the other thing to think about too is, does it all have to be, double rates? Is there, is there efficiencies? Because it's your time too, to get up there and get that, the whole industry to give days up to go dig it and get it on vessels.
Well, it'd be a shot in the arm for the shellfishing industry, for guys on a non-E day to have a place where they can do well. And also help the industry while they're, making money and stuff. But just the point being, we just, like to Jim's point about, we gotta really start moving, we gotta get the assessment on the clams as soon as we get the money. Because sometimes these tests take 6 weeks, so. That's just the point, like May 1st might be like a target date to start the process, or like soon after, and it won't be one event, it'll probably be 10.
Could I comment on a few things here? And this is driving me crazy.
Okay. And then
All right.
we'll go-
Right. Well, one is I think more of the effort should be put into the pathology work, and I'll tell you why. Some of the metals and PCBs and so forth. Well, the last time there was really a problem, the Clean Water Act was in 1972. All right. there has never been really any source problems because of the effluent control that has been put in since the Clean Water Act and the various divisions of DEM that have basically controlled things. The only thing that may be an issue is deep buried leftovers from the metal plating industry that was occurring and really went out of business in the '70s. There hasn't been really source problems for 50 years.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that there should be enough testing to, convince yourselves that there's not really a problem. And then put it out. And I think a lot of it is psychological. And the reason being is that when the heavy metals and the real serious PCB problems with this were largely in the 50s and 60s. And there's kind of a sort of a mental picture of complete eco disaster that has kind of been talked about a lot. And where that came from was, largely pictures of little kids with mercury poisoning in Japan back in the 1950s. Seriously, EPA, DEM have really kind of fixed that, and it's kind of like worrying about a non-issue 50 years kind of after really the pollution control is so I really think that you're enough of the pathology that you're not moving some sick animals around is probably the most effective way to put your money, and maybe just do a little bit of the spot testing to kind of like reassure yourselves that, boy, there's not, but I wouldn't go whole hog on this because there's no reason to look for something that isn't there.
Good point, that's a good point.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Nope, my hands are down.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Okay. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Lizzie. I'm a research biologist at the Commercial Fisheries Research Foundation. We just wanted to let SAP know that we've been thinking about the Providence River, the issue with the judging, and we put a couple of proposals in to do some work where we would look at the population structure in the Potawatomi Spawner Sanctuary to see what's going on in there, to see if it would be an ideal place to transplant these quahogs into that area, seeing as the judge vessel can't get into all of those areas, so we were trying to get into some of the different areas where transplants have occurred in the past to establish some sort of baseline. And we're also working on another proposal to do more work throughout other areas of the bay, not just in the spawner sanctuary, to establish sort of like a population structure so that when it is time to transplant the quahogs, we have a better idea of what exists there. Don't put too many in one spot. Is the spawner sanctuary as effective or not as effective? And just answer some of those questions. So we're thinking about it to help contribute to some of these questions and hopefully provide some more answers that have come up to some of the questions that have been posed.
And we talked to Dave DeCovey, I think is.
Duffy, or
Right, okay, Dave.
Yeah.
Is she from the same place? Okay.
yeah,
Thank you. About actually overseeing and running the program. People know that this last year, NBC could only do one event. And we asked them to process, and they've been wonderful for us for years. So we actually went with Dave, and Jeff helped to see if they could help run the program, the paychecks, and all the things that would be required for something as big as what we're talking about. If we have transplants once a week and there's 40, 50 guys, That, that's something DM would have a hard time doing. And so we've actually talked about bringing them in to help us run the program, and they can waive their fee. It's like a 10%, fee to lessen that. So they wouldn't be expensive to help kind of distribute the money and help run the program for us. And I think Anna DM has also been part of that discussion and also supportive of the idea of having a third party that is trained to do that, has
Yeah,
the stuff to be able to do it, all of the infrastructure and to cut checks and do all the stuff that's gonna be needed.
yeah, we've been chatting with, CFRF Lizzie and, Dr. Bethany, and, we've been in communication with our director of DEM and NBC, on progressing forward with the transplant program, especially since this is gonna be such a large scale compared to what we've been doing. And it's gonna be a lot of effort and a lot of time out there. And so getting all that payout completed and everything is gonna be processed, and so, we've been actively communicating
And Dave has been supportive of it, and he was with Jeff at our transplant when we did Greenwich. So he's kind of getting his feet wet, understanding what's going on in the process and stuff, so it's really a helpful thing, and could be, we're very thankful for it.
So we have one more.
So, yeah, I actually have a
Sorry,
couple of points.
sorry.
So the comment was made earlier about other than bull wrecking. I just thought that if we found somebody, if it's not coming out fast enough with bull rakes, instead of leaving it there, if we're running out, if that clock is ticking and we can't get it, to have a dredge boat or somebody, availability of a dredge boat to dig up some of those clams, so they don't get stuck in there.
Yep.
If they're not coming out fast enough with with us.
See, the water's pretty shallow there, so I think a lot of, no, I agree with you, I agree, we talked about having
Yeah.
a secondary, where it drops off.
Yeah.
Have a dredge boats as
Oh, no,
part of the
I
process.
think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think we wanna get as much out of there as we can.
The other thing, before we run out of time, this is for you, Doctor, or you guys, but when, years ago, they did the dredging, John, you remember that, they did the dredging on the Providence River. And, they did it in the summer, they did it like year round, and with all the sediment, that actually had a big effect on the clams up on top of the channel bank. And this being open, and this being dredged down there, as soon as I heard that, I heard the other day that it might go into the summer. And I'm like, they're gonna put all that sediment in there when the clams are feeding. And we might have a lot of mortality. So I'm hoping that, you guys open it up for us, so rather than them dying, because they're gonna die. There's a good chance, very good chance that they're gonna die, just like they did years ago when they dredged that whole channel. And, you gotta, maybe flex a little bit and get us up there, because, that opening up all summer, it's not gonna be good for them. It's really not gonna be good for them. Like I said, we lost a lot of clams, Barrington. We lost a lot of Barrington clams, we lost, Inimicket Point. That whole, when they were doing that, the water was ugly,
But Jerry, those are, thanks, those are all good points. One of the things that the Corps is working on now, and why they haven't finalized their kind of craft dredge plan, is that they need to also develop not only models, but a monitoring plan so they can monitor the turbidity. And they tried to set it up so that they're not working, in area E, during periods when you guys will be.
I think it's just the runoff with the tides, because that's what happened over there. They weren't dredging in Barrington Beach, which is a mile and a half away.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It's not the point that where they're actually dredging, it's just gonna be the runoff from it. If you ever seen, if they use the same technique as they use in the river, it's messy. It's really messy, and it's just, it looks like, you know what it actually looks like? It looks like pollen season. It looks like when after a good, heavy pollen season, when the boats are in the water, that's, the whole area is like that. So now I'm kind of concerned about the shellfish in the river. Because they're gonna be doing that, because I know what they did, it's killed a lot of ground.
Big project.
Yeah.
Last one, Jim?
One more, and I'll be quick with this. And Lizzie, thank you for introducing yourself and bringing forth the information on these proposals, which is precisely the necessity of having this joint cohort commission. So that the researchers, the division, the regulatory agencies, other universities, and the shellfish industry are sitting at the table together, talking about putting these proposals together. You need our input to direct you where research is critically needed, and some of the questions that the researchers would have, we can answer if we're all at the table together. So this was one of 3 recommendations that came out of the Joint Cohort Commission with their report issued in May of 2024. We're 18 months out now. We still don't have this permanent commission. We still don't have sustained funding levels for transplants. And, there's still some discussion about seed and hatcheries and all that, but I think this is a really important one, along with sustained funding levels for transplants going out in the future. We got to do something drastic with our industry. And one thing I'll say right now, let's get rid of the 12 bushel limit that's been in the regulations for 50 years. No one's catching 12 bushels. Why do we have a 12 bushel limit?
We used to catch a lot of bigs.
I mean, Jim, if this panel is interested in, there's a process to go down and want to remove or change possession limits, so, I mean, this is exactly the group that would do that. So
Understood.
if the panel wants to go in that direction, by all means, bring it forward.
Thank you.
So Jim, along with all the other those support questions, like thanks for bringing it forward, and just offer that, the division, the department is very supportive of that concept of having, a COHOG advisory committee. We don't have funding for it, but we've had a number of internal discussions about it, trying to figure out a process or a path forward for it. I think right now, it's still in process, but one certain option that, might be viable is using the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries Institute as that conduit. So folks that aren't familiar with that, they're here, housed within URI is the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries Institute. It's something that was established around 2014, and it's a collaborative agreement between DEM, and specifically the Division of Marine Fisheries, but it can extend to other divisions within the department and URI, and it's really focused on trying to coordinate and coordinate to determine what are some of the questions the research needs and research questions, and work together to try to find funds and support those projects. And so it seems like it aligns really well with this. But what's lacking in large part, like you said, is the funds, not just to support it, the continued transplant, but also to say the logistical support for this. And that's something that we're working on. You don't have it, but I just want you to know that, the division wants you all to know that this is something that we certainly really value your all input, and something we want to see move forward and work.
Thank you for that. We do want to see this advisory committee up and running, hopefully early in this coming year. I said earlier, we got 10 years to solve this problem, because after that, there's no more industry.
Real quick, so we get out of here, there was a discussion at the Marine Fisheries Council about changing the SAP panel that we talked about at the last meeting. And it was a good discussion. It got late in the night, and I'm doing this by memory, so please, I know Anna, Scott was all there. But it went back and forth, and, with the council members and stuff, comments like, well, it's not broke, don't fix it, or, trying to bring it up to speed with other committees. But at the very end, and we talked about, basically the members that we have now, the ones that have been attending the meetings, would be grandfathered in or in, and there'd be no term limits. This is what was talked about. And new members, and I think Dave, the company, brought it up, and I thought it was a great point. He goes, well, this looks like a couple of members that you're looking to remove anyway. and we have room for a three more. So I think the number was 5 new members would come in. But the lawyer there didn't think it was appropriate to have the new ones have term limits and the old ones not. So we basically, what we talked about is there will be no term limits once you're on the panel. And basically the only thing, unless you ask to leave, you know, for whatever reason, health, age, that you won't be asked to leave. And basically it'd be a not attending the meetings would be the exit strategy for the panel. Did I?
Unexcused absence.
Yeah, we even talked about that. I mean, if you only have 4 meetings in a year and you get 3 unexcused, you know, it kind of.
I think it was 3 excused. So the idea is that even, you know, everybody, you know, miss a meeting.
My dog ate my homework.
You just don't want people to.
You
You want
sick your
you
kids.
want panel members to be present and active, and if they're not gonna be here. So, yeah, thanks, Mike. You know, we took a lot of the council, it is the council policy, and the panel is just that panel of the council. So we heard, you know, from them, we heard loud and clear what their position was moving forward, and on the sort of the operations of the panel. I think, you know, Mike hit it on the head. You know, we were never trying to take anybody off the panel at all. We realize the institutional knowledge that everybody has here is extremely valuable to the industry. So we're just gonna move forward. We've updated the policy with a lot of the council's concerns that'll be presented to them probably at the next council meeting, but in general, it's sort of status quo, and just as Mike had mentioned, sort of, you know, either panel members would remove themselves or they would be excused due to, you know, absence, and then we would repopulate, you know, over time with that fashion, so.
Yeah, it was a very good discussion, I thought.
Yeah.
It was, appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. And like, Dave Duchovny is from the X-Files.
Oh, that's right.
We lifted Quantica.
I appreciate that. His last name's the same though, right? It's a different first, or no?
Last name's different.
Oh.
Dave, that's right.
Never mind.
I have one last thing, and I'm backtrack real quick, because I know I want to get out of here as much as anybody else. When you talk about commissions, things like that, and moving these core hooks to certain areas, I just want to point out the fact that that's a Band-Aid at best. There's a bigger issue, why the recruitment isn't happening. And that bigger issue was actually found out by the commission that Jim and Mike sat on, just a year or 2 ago about the nitrogen. Now you can place these clams wherever you like, and you know, there's, depending on the area that you're talking about, there is, in my estimation, less than a 30% chance that they'll even survive for any length of time. If you put them into, say, Greenwich, within 6 months, they're gonna get mocked up from the guys, might be some residual left over. But if you put them anywhere else into the bay, okay, what we have seen in the declines that Jim was talking about earlier, in the declines in harvest rates, is directly proportional to the nitrogen being stepped down. If you look at the calendar, the nitrogen was started to be lessened. So the commission, which I testified at with Jim at the State House, which I thought did a great job of finding different reasons why there's no recruitment. That's the bigger issue as far as this industry surviving. We can move millions of pounds around, and quite frankly, they'll get mopped up, and we still could be in the same predicament that we're going to be in 10 years. I don't know if I'll be here in 10 years, but maybe I will. But for the younger guys that are still around, they're gonna see it at that point in time where there's not going to be the resource. Now, we've also taken a big part of the resource and moved them around, and we've mopped them up too. So there is a bigger issue that I don't think needs to be overlooked. I agree with there should be a commission, but I also think that the commission or governing body has some sort of teeth that holds the agencies accountable for what they are not doing. And then not doing certain things, you know, as far as the nitrogen levels we'll put in, we're the FDA, from what I believe, said 5 pots per whatever million, and we're putting in 2.4. Because it comes down to money. My point is, if they don't have anything to eat, we can put these all over the place. They will not live, they will not survive. And they won't, it's like any other species, when a female, most species gets taxed, they will stop their reproductive mechanism, self-preservation. So what I see here is there's a bigger issue that, yes, this is all good, but we really need to go back to why these are not our sets aren't coming back the way they should. And this was said at the meeting, at our Shellfishman's meeting, by a number of the old time guys that have been around. And, historically, sets in areas that we have gone back to year in and year out are not there anymore. So I just wanted to lay that out there, that I agree with Jim 100%. There needs to be a commission, there needs to be a governing body of some sort, but it needs to have teeth, A, and B, it really needs to address the bigger issue is why the recruitment isn't happening now with less shellfishermen on the water. You would think there would be more shellfish in the water with less guys fishing it, and there actually is less. So this is an issue that really needs to be, again, not forgotten about in all of this turmoil where we're moving massive amounts of shellfish. And to your point, we need to find out the places that we're going to put them into spawner sanctuaries, what it looks like in that spawner sanctuary, because if there is no shellfish there is a reason. There is a reason, why they're not there. So why do we dump millions of pounds of shellfish into an area that's notoriously there's nothing there? The chances of survival are next to nothing, none. So I just want to lay that out, and I thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just add that's super important. But when I look at the list here from Jim, I think about the possibility of like the federal legislation and dumping funding. That's what we really need, right? Dumping that funding into number 4, this establishment of an advisory committee. We think of it kind of as a steering committee, right? This committee that sits there and says, hey, these are the research needs. Now we have the funding to go out and do the work to answer those questions that you're referring to. So a lot hinges on obviously funding, and hopefully, that federal legislation does in some way, shape, or form. From the bill, when I reviewed it, kind of looked like the idea was that it would be broken down sort of regionally. There were states up and down the coast that were added to it, and hopefully the idea would be is to funnel funds into individual states to do this work. So on the federal level, like it's hard to believe that managers in Virginia would be overly concerned about Rhode Island issues in the shellfish industry. So hopefully that moves forward, but it's a difficult time in the federal government right now. So
if I can, just very briefly, those who don't know, DEM has tried twice, at least, maybe the third in progress, to get some sort of state funding to block this, as the commission should, and they just haven't happened. Political follow through hasn't happened. There was a request right at the end of the committee that essentially was ignored. There was a proposal last budget round for a septage fee. That's so many cents per million gallons, and that would be applied to monitoring the bay. This sort of research into the problems that you've all just described. So there have been efforts that haven't happened. So if any of this reaches, it's election years, the political mechanism is really reluctant. They view these things as taxes. But if they see the light of day and you can support them, that's at least at the state level, you've got to fund this somehow.
I have a real easy way to fund it that will stir everybody up. And I have an export releases. I pay A for the E, I pay the health tip fee. Who pays for their private docks every year? I believe you have a private dock, and once you have it, you have a license plate, and that's it. How about we start putting in, you're taking away from the public rights to use that water. How about there's some sort of a fee for those people that have those 50-foot recreational docks sticking out? How about funding that, putting that into a fund to go to save the bay? Boy, would that serve that
Well, unfortunately, Jeff, the guys with the docks are the ones that
what happened.
own the politicians.
It is interesting because there is, as far as I know, they don't pay anything.
Jim has done this, so I'll recognize Jim. We talked to the director the other night at the Marine Fishery Council meeting about what Dave just talked about. We had talked about a funding source, and he said the same thing that Dave said, that basically the government didn't want to add taxes and this other stuff. We've asked for that legislation from the director, the language, so we can give it to the representative Solomon and the ones that are on the commission to see if they could help move it forward. And you're saying election year, yes, it's tough there, but also, you know, commercial with a bunch of call hoggers doing transplants, you know, getting, you know, fun, you know, money to move and helping people is pretty powerful too. So we're gonna be pursuing that to maybe help get that kind of things passed.
To your point, Jeff, I wouldn't go after the residential docks with the plates. I'd go after the marina facilities,
There we go.
right? They have been protected for decades. They privatize water for commercial use, not recreational use, commercial use. They're getting money from their customers, and they don't pay any lease for use of state waters.
There we go.
Safe Harbor now has roughly 50%, maybe even more of the market now. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You think they couldn't come up with a few dollars to help out the hog industry through the state? Come on.
So it sounds like we'll talk to Solomon about that one.
That would get a lot of pushback.
Oh, yeah.
Everything will, everything will.
You guys put that out there with me, paper, whatever the president is. You say, hey, you know, all you Republicans start going along. You play with simple. Stuff, you get something.
Katie says we're adjourned.
Thank you all, it's good meeting.